Hi, thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about supervisory style and have a little training over that. So our objective for the training is I will be able to understand my supervisory style and better understand how to support my teachers. So keeping our objective in mind, there are sticky notes on your table. Take a second, look at the styles on the screen, and determine where you think you fall right now before we get into it. Do you think you're more of a directive person? A directive approach is high supervisor control and low teacher control. Do you think you're more collaborative? A collaborative approach focuses on working together to come up with agreed upon goals. Or do you think you're lean towards more non-directive? Non-directive approach is low supervisor control and high teacher control. So take a second, jot down what you think you currently are without having an inventory or anything, just off the top of your head. 10 more seconds. All right, perfect. So put that sticky note off to the side. We will revisit it at the end to see if your hypothesis deemed true or untrue. So now we're actually going to take an inventory to determine what kind of style that we are. So one, we're going to take a couple minutes and complete the survey that is in your handout. Two, we're going to tabulate our results and calculate your percentages. It tells you the directions for that on your survey. And three, we're going to reflect on what you previously thought and determine if we're correct. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to complete this survey. All right, now that we're done with the survey, we're going to tabulate our results. Let me know if you need any assistance with that. It's pretty simple. I did mine on my phone calculator. All right, now we're going to reflect on what we previously did with our sticky note. Were you correct? Did you think you were a directive person and it turns out maybe you're non-directive or maybe you're collaborative? All right, so moving on. So now I know my style. Okay, what does it mean? So different teachers might need different styles of supervision. This is all depending on where they are currently at in their career, their personality type, maybe they're new to this content area. So depending on what teacher you're supporting, you might have to be flexible with your supervisory style. Maybe you're a very directive supervisor, but you need a teacher you have a teacher who needs more of a collaborative, maybe even non-directive style of supervision. So let's take a look at where our teachers can fall. So we have 4 quadrants. This is also on your handout in your participant guide. So all of our teachers will fall generally in one of these 4 quadrants. And it's not sticky. If they're quadrant 1 and they gain experience and then they move into maybe another quadrant, that's okay. Or maybe they start with quadrant 4 and they lose sight of where they're going and they have to fall into another quadrant. So quadrant 1, this is your low abstraction and low commitment. So this is a teacher who doesn't really have a good grasp of what's going on in their classroom. They need you to come in and observe them and let them know where they can improve on. That's the low abstraction part of this. Low commitment, maybe they kind of want to be better, but they're not really committed to it. They're happy kind of where they're at. Maybe they understand that they could be better, but there's not much push there. So this is the teacher that really needs us to be directive and set out improvement plans for them. So that is our quadrant 1 teacher. Our quadrant 2 teacher still has low abstraction, so they still don't really have a great grasp of what's happening in their classroom. They still need you to be there and give them pointers on this was happening, I saw this X amount of times. But this teacher has high commitment level. So they're really interested in changing and they will have ideas on how to change and really push themselves to get there. So this is a more collaborative approach. You might need to point out what you would like to see improved upon, but they will take that initiative and run with it and come up with ideas on how they can do that. So that is your collaborative approach. Quadrant 3. This is low commitment, high abstraction. So again, like Quadrant 1 teacher, they're not really committed into improving that much. Maybe they have something going on at home, maybe they just had a baby, something else is going on in their life, and so teaching is kind of taking a backseat. High abstraction. So they know what's going on. So they know that their students are not engaged as they should be, but they're not really trying to fix it right now. They're kind of just where they're at. So this can go one of two ways. You can have a collaborative supervision with this teacher. So like before in Quadrant 2, you will work with this teacher to come up with a plan. Or if that's not really working out for this type of teacher, you might have to get directive with them. That goes with this low commitment. They know what's going on, but they're not willing or ready to change it. So you might have to step in with more directive, how we're going to change it, timelines, what to do, follow-up steps. That brings us to our last quadrant, quadrant number 4. This quadrant, our teachers are high abstraction, high commitment. So they know what's going on in their classrooms. They don't really need you to come in and tell them, hey, so-and-so was off task, or your lessons need to be more engaging. They understand that. They can see it for themselves. They also have high commitment, so that's awesome. They are ready to go. They're ready to change. They're willing to go to workshops, professional development, observe other teachers on campus. They want to be better. So this is your teacher that you can probably take a non-directive approach to. They understand what's going on and they are having a plan to fix it. They might need a little help here and there to reach that plan and reach that goal, but they, for the most part, can handle it themselves. So that is our non-directive approach. So we're going to do a little practice. So there's a scenario on the screen and we're going to work together to figure out what supervisory style might best fit this teacher. So let's read the scenario together. It says, in a post-observation conference, you and Mr. Smith discussed the data you gathered during his observation. His students were not engaged when completing the assigned worksheet. You explained to Mr. Smith that he should try to plan more authentic lessons and only use worksheets sparingly. You offer to send him to a workshop on engaging students through lesson plans. Mr. Smith is excited about this opportunity and also suggests that he observe and plan with Ms. Jones. Mr. Smith states that her students are always engaged and she rarely uses the textbook. You suggest that you will come back to observe his progress in 2 weeks. You both agree on this timeline. So, looking at Mr. Smith, we can determine that he didn't really know his students were not that engaged in his planning. I determined this because if he keeps using the same lesson plans and the same worksheets, and there's not really a change, then he's maybe not aware of what's going on. So we call that low abstraction. But he's excited for this workshop that you're planning on sending him to, and he actually has another plan that he wants to go observe Miss Jones. So I would call that high commitment. He's willing to change. So if we look back on our quadrants, low abstraction and high commitment falls under collaborative. So I would use a collaborative style with Mr. Smith and see how that goes, and maybe we might need to alter it, but he seems pretty willing to change, and then maybe as time goes on, he can start noticing what's going on in his classroom himself. But for now, we're going to stick with the collaborative style of training. Does anybody have any questions over anything we went over today? All right, perfect. So I would keep these quadrants handy. You can always refer back to them. And I wouldn't use this as like an end-all be-all. If you have a teacher who seems to exhibit low abstraction, maybe high commitment, like Mr. Smith here, but collaborative's not working, you can always alter it to fit whatever the teacher needs. So thank you for joining me today as we went over our supervisory styles.